Nice. Setting up that webinar, my sweet, sweet webinar. And I got to go here. I'm going to click posts. Okay, done. Redirecting to Facebook Live page. I think we're live, guys. I think it's happening. And I got to close this immediately so I don't get distracted by Facebook. It tells me it's redirecting me to the webinar page, but it's actually redirecting me to Facebook, which then has me get distracted. And this would be a really terrible show where it's just come watch Adam scroll through Facebook with drool hanging down his chin for an hour and a half. No one's interested in that show. I tried it and it failed miserably. So hello, everyone. I'm fresh back from Cancun, Mexico. I flew back home Wednesday night. So this is like day 2 of being back home, which is pretty cool because I was thinking as we were finishing up our time there, man, what an amazing trip we've had. We've gotten so much from the work we've been doing here. We've really met some amazing people. And I thought, boy, good thing I love the rest of my life because otherwise I'd be really sad coming home. And it's also really cool to live here in Victoria where winter and fall are kind of pushing through and it's kind of cloudy and rainy and a little bit moody. Weather's very moody. But it feels really good to be back here, back in our house, hanging out with people we love, all that cool stuff. It reminds me that one of the practices I'm currently working on is creating a really empowered relationship with all of the seasons. So in the past, morning, Robin, morning, Andrea. In the past, my relationship with the seasons would often be like, oh, summer's amazing in Victoria. I love spring and fall. Winter's tough. You know, you can hear my relationship to winter in the way I'm speaking about it. Winter's tough. You got to tough it out, blah, 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 whatever the story was. And that's one way to hold winter. And I'm practicing creating different ways to hold it, different ways to really be about the seasons. And this year, one of the things I'm taking on is practicing being with the depth of winter, really being with the, like the nesting. You know, winter has this feeling of like pulling inwards and really going internal. And doesn't mean you have to do that alone. You can go internal, you can nest with other people, invite them over and spend time with them. But I'm just creating new ways of being about and with the seasons. Morning, Robin. Long time no see. This is cool because Robin and I have talked plenty. Actually, Robin lives just down the road from me, and we've talked plenty on lives in the past, but I don't think I've ever seen you on the new format, Robin, with the special celebrity BMX guest star Nick Benetti. So I'm going to share a few of the things that I'm bringing back from Cancun, Mexico, such as pronouncing Mexico that way. That's a big takeaway, huge takeaway, pronouncing Mexico correctly. I didn't do it there. In case you didn't notice, I slipped over it and felt like a dork, and I was going to talk right past it, but no, sir. The way you overcome imposter syndrome is by just owning that you're being a huge dork. Let's get to the goods. Mug, nothing in it. So this isn't a stunt mug filled with tea already. I know people have been asking, I got a lot of letters. Hey, Adam, how do we know that the tea leaves the teapot and actually is going into this cup? How do we know you're not just pouring the tea like into your lap and this is already filled with tea? Or really want to go back to that tepid pee joke I noticed. That's really got some mileage for me. Okay, here it comes. The tea's going in the cup. It's our favorite part. It's happening. Watch this. Long pour. That's a tall pour. Good party trick. All right. So let's have that first sip there, everyone. Again, dork. Let's have that first sip together, everyone. I've got Christmas in Paris today. Okay. First, the cool diddly bits. Every time I go away to somewhere, like Peru or Cancun or something like that, one of the things I like to bring back is a crystal of sorts. I'm not a, I'm not sure how to hold this. I'm not a crystal person in the sense that I hold it like, oh, I've got rose quartz. I do have some rose quartz here, and it's grounding me in it and magically taking away my sad feelings or whatever. But there is something really beautiful about the shapes that the earth creates for me. And I like the idea of bringing back like a crystal that's sort of like, hey, this is a reminder. Every time I look at it, I can be like, oh yeah. So for example, I got this really cool, this is a geode, but it's been polished. So normally what you'd have with a geode is they'd cut it right down the middle and then you just see the flat surface. This is a circular, isn't that cool? Circle sphere geode. So that is a reminder every time I look at it over here, I'm like, oh yeah, Peru. That was a cool life-changing trip. Mexico, this time I came back with 2 pieces. I'm going to show you this egg-shaped piece of obsidian. Isn't that cool? Man, you obsidian. And the reason I really like this idea of an egg is because of the story by, it was Andy Weir, called The Egg, which if you have not yet read, you're in for a treat. It's a very short story, and I'm going to share it right now in the comments that you can. This is called terrible funnel job. I'm sending you away from the thing you're watching. Leave the thing you're watching. If you get bored of what's happening here before we get into coaching, you can go and read The Egg. Excuse me. And mute so you don't have to hear me coughing in your ear. The Egg is a beautiful parable, I guess you could call it, and really a beautiful way to look at spirituality and who we are on this planet and our role on the planet and all of that stuff. I'm just going to open this window. So I love that I brought that back from Mexico, and that's there to remind me. And then I also got this super cool, look at this. This is called, I don't know what this is called, some kind of ore. I thought it was peacock ore, but it might be something different. But anyhow, that's beautiful. And I like looking at it. So that came back with me. I thought I was going to have more of a story about that. Turns out I didn't. I just have a piece of ore that I really like. Oh, well, that works. We spent 8 days with Steve Zaffron, Jerry Eschereva, I'll never get her last name right, and Werner Erhard, some of the really people at the very forefront of ontology, the whole work that I'm involved in, the study of being and supporting people to be being. And the way they would talk about the difference between epistemological mastery, which is to say the mastery where you know something top to bottom, you know all about something, versus ontological mastery would be the difference between knowing and having read through and knowing all of the mechanics of a bike and knowing all about how you're meant to pedal and that you turn left, knowing all of this in your head versus actually riding a bike, actually being able to get on the bike and ride it. So most of us, when it comes to riding a bike, have a deep ontological mastery of that. We don't have to think about it. It's just in us. We are able to be balanced on the bike, or to put it in kind of more confusing but more rigorous language, we are able to be riding a bike. We don't have to do anything about it. It's just there. We be that. So that would be ontological mastery. And that's a lot of what I'm passionate about, what I'm committed to is how do we deepen our ontological mastery of whatever we're up to in life? And how do we actually get access to that? How's that even a thing? Whereas most of what the world is about, most of academia at least, and most of how we've learned to learn is epistemologically, which means that we go and we read a lot and we watch how-to videos. We really go through that stuff at length. And so this whole course was about developing an ontological mastery of leadership. How do you be leader? Rather than know all of the things, rather than having read 50 leadership books and be able to point to them, rather than have a course that you've attended to say, I attended this course, ergo I am leader because I can talk about it. How do we actually just create ourselves as leader in the moment to moment? Super, super cool. 2 things I'll share before we get to the good stuff. I'm gonna have a sip of tea first. Give myself a breath. Give you a breath. Hey, Tammy, long time no see. So 2 things there was many things I took from our time in Cancun in this course. 2 things I'll share right now were the foundation of integrity as a part of the being of leader. So to be leader, our word is so critical. And the way most of us hold our word is I'm good if I keep my word and I'm bad if I don't keep my word. And the only way to stay in integrity is keeping my word, which kind of leaves us, we're a bit screwed because as soon as we don't keep our word, we're now out of integrity with no way to resolve it and we're bad. So we end up shaming ourselves. And because of these things, that makes it much harder for us to just be able to come to terms and own when we haven't kept our word. And so they spent a lot of time working through like the foundation of how does one honor their word when they haven't kept it? How do we walk ourselves back into integrity? It was really cool and led to a lot of conversations in the groups that we were doing work in, where someone would show up late for the third day in a row. And I'd be like, well, we got to have a conversation about integrity again, guys, not because it's wrong or anything like that, but because that's what we're here for. And if we're not talking about what's showing up here, when are we going to talk about it? The other concept that I really loved was this idea of being given your being and your action by something bigger than yourself. And that's what a hero is. That's what they described, is like a hero is someone who sees some possibility that is greater than themselves, and that calls them forward to act and to be in the world a certain way that would not be available to them if they were solely focused on themselves. And we can think of like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. These are great examples of men. Maybe Mother Teresa would be an example of a woman, but like people that were present to something bigger than themselves, and you might say they were used by it. They were called into action and into being a certain way in the world by virtue of that thing that was bigger than themselves. There would have been plenty of times, I'm sure, when Nelson Mandela was in his prison cell for 20 some odd years, where he didn't want to do anything other than be angry, hurt, scream, give up. And it was that possibility, that thing that was bigger than himself, that really called him forward to create himself day in, day out, the way that would then allow him to keep pushing forward the things that he saw. Okay, let's do a check-in here. Need to have a sip of tea. I think it's time to get to the good stuff. I've yammered on for long enough. Let me sip this. Close down the egg. Let's get me out of the spotlight. Let's bring Nick on board. So Nick, turn your video on, turn your audio on. Now you have to talk. Save me the trouble. Yay. How's it going, man?
I'm good. How are
you? Good. How is it just sitting in the green room, so to speak, listening to me yammer on?
It's pretty brilliant, I gotta say. I didn't know whether to contemplate like how Mr. Rogers your tea invitation was, or to jump in and correct you on the geodes, or
correct me on the geodes now, because this is something I might not know.
No, I'm staying out of the perfection zone. It's cool.
No, I would really, you'd actually serve me. Like, tell me tell me about geodes, because I don't actually know.
Oh, no, actually, you got pretty much everything right. I was just feeling my inner child come out, my inner 8-year-old geologist. I was like frothing at the mouth. I was like, oh, rocks.
They're cool. Do you have any rocks near you right now?
Not near me right now, but I've got a whole bucket full of rocks I've collected of them.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just felt your chi and your chakras felt very unaligned, and now it makes sense because there's just a bucket of rocks somewhere. But
I don't have any crystals near me or anything.
I joke with my we have a cleaner come through, and she like dusts my office, which is such an amazing gift to myself, because otherwise I would never. Okay, I want your mug. Very triggered by the fact that you have that. You and Toku both got me with these mugs. Anyhow, she comes in and cleans, and I always warn, like, please make sure you put all of the rocks back where they are, or you'll disturb the delicate balance of the universe, and that's on you. So she knows you got to get it all arranged so that we all stay good.
Perfect.
Okay, let's see. So by way of introducing you, here's some things I know about you. We and I first met because you took, were you in Accomplishment Coaching's first ever Victoria program?
I was.
That's super cool. So Nick and I know each other both from the ontological coach training program that we both have been involved with. We've both been trained through that work. It came up to Victoria, I think they're in their 3rd year now, which is super cool, because for the longest time, we had to trek ourselves down to Seattle. It's days travel each way, and Nick just got to sit back and stay in Victoria, which was very envious of. And then you also, I remember, have a background being a rad BMX, what were you? What was your deal?
So the pinnacle of my BMX career, I was a pro level athlete. I was on the Canadian national team, traveling internationally for World Cups and living in the spotlight. It was a pretty sensational moment at 18 years old.
That'd be a lot I imagine, to hold like as an 18-year-old, like just a lot of energy, a lot to sort of be with.
Yeah. And looking back on it, I never really understood that I was holding all that. And then I think it dawned on me how much that was when I retired from it. And I didn't hold on to that anymore. The cup felt very empty.
Yeah. I was walking through a pub last night to go to the bathroom, and obviously it was Halloween. So there's like a million people all dressed up and blah, blah, blah. But I was just noticing the people around me, and I walked by this really tall guy, and I'm a fairly tall man already. And this guy had like a couple inches, maybe 3 or 4 inches on me. And I was just present to, like, that's just, if you're very tall or stand out in any way, you're going to get a lot of attention. And I was just contemplating, like, wow, I wonder what that's like for him to have some degree of attention aimed towards him in any room he enters. You know, we never really think about that. And most of us aren't even aware that's happening, that we have to, like, that there's something we're holding. It's just kind of in the background of who we are, how we relate to ourselves. Like, oh yeah, I just show up and do stuff. And so I can imagine at 18, like, I know how I was at 18, which was a complete disaster. I can imagine you were probably a little better than that, but that'd just be a lot to be with.
Yeah, my life was not, it didn't exist outside of BMX. All my friends, all my time, 7 days a week. It was just all over there with the bike.
Cool, man. Well, let's dive in. I'm going to take some notes while we talk. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. Okay, awesome. So what are we gonna talk about, Nick?
So I did my coach program with AC, and really I've not put a ton of energy into building the coaching practice, but it is still something that I hold very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
But I've also, with this history as a professional athlete, felt a huge draw to help people physically as well. So I just passed my certified personal trainer program.
Congrats.
Yes, yesterday. Thank you. And so what I'm trying or hoping or all of those things to create is a way for me to combine the ontological side of coaching and do that with personal training. Because I find when training people, they want to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes of their training session doing this, like, who am I being, diffusion into their workout, and it really draws a lot of energy away from the physical aspect of what we're here for.
Right. So, can you say more about that? I'm not sure I followed.
Yeah. So a lot of the time I find that when people jump into a personal training session, there's like a ontological debrief that happens with the trainer. So somebody shows up and they're ready to do their physical exercise and be coached that way. And they jump in and there's 10 minutes at the beginning where it's like a synopsis of what's been going on and who this person has been being, whether it's with their spouse or their kids or their job, or and it's all fields that are relative and pertain to how they show up as the person that's being physically trained.
Yeah.
But as an ontological coach, I also know there's a huge amount of value to put the time in to work on that conversation outside of the 10 minutes that we give at the start of a training program.
Right.
So getting my CPT was really a way for me to get the physical outlet of coaching people, because I love being hands-on and being right about giving them physical direction, like proper body mechanics and moving properly and all that. But it's now I'm looking for this avenue that I get to create with both, and so that I can play that field for both sides.
Okay. So making sure I've got this, again, congrats. You got certified just yesterday. So now you're sort of certified to train people physically, to be right about how people should lift weights and move and benefit their body. Thank goodness for being right. And then And then there's also this desire to like not just address what people are doing, but to support people in who they're being as they do it. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
And you're wanting to like find a way to combine these two things.
Yeah, kind of create myself like a full spectrum practice so that I get to use both.
Okay, got it. So where are you in that process? Like I kind of get the rough idea of what you want to create. Where is that currently for you?
So I still have it very split 50-50. Kind of the way it feels for me is that I'm showing up and I have both entities, but they're separate. My personal training, I work out of a local facility and I've been going there for 15 years. It's like home. It's very comfortable, but it's all new staff, new owners, new people, and it's awesome. The dynamic is great. And it's
Cool.
an entire separate entity. And with ontological coaching, I find I hold it in a different way. And it only exists with my laptop, my phone, and the people I connect with through technology and or referrals. So I get, for me, a lot more satisfaction almost out of the physical meet and greet with the gym. And I don't want to lose the interaction I have with coaching ontologically.
Right. Okay.
As separate entities.
Got it. Okay. So I get, it sounds like there's kind of a, well, let me ask a different question. What do you want to leave here with today?
I think a greater sense of unity between the identities of the two for me.
A greater sense of unity between the identities. Okay. I'm going to talk to these people for a sec. Okay.
Absolutely.
So for everyone watching, which appears to be 0 right now, we have like a sense of what Nick's up to. We have a sense of sort of a little bit possibly maybe of what ails him, but not really a clear idea of like, where are we trying to, what's the place to get to? What do we want to leave here with? What do we want to end with? So that's where we're in the conversation right now. Till we know where someone wants to go, there's not really much to do. So you said a greater sense of unity between, oh, thanks, Heather. A greater sense of unity between the identities is what you said, right?
Yes.
Great. What does that mean? Sounds good. I'll give you that.
It does.
Yeah.
Almost sounds right.
Sounds great. Yeah. It's definitely right, but what does it mean?
I think it feels like a way for me to create a place where both exist at the same time rather than separately.
A place where both exist rather than separately. Okay. So do you have a sense of what that would look like in your life? Like if you had created that?
A place and time where there's no distinction between the two. I offer personal training on the physical plane and ontological coaching for that. Definitely not at the same time because the energy is needed for both, but to have the ability to present both as the same aspect.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll try and explain it a little better. What I'm finding is people very much resonate with personal training, and they get it. It's a physical outlet. People see that there's growth that happens, and I get very drawn to that because it's my right place. It's easy for me. It's comfortable to be with people physically, to train.
Yeah.
And to get coaching to that same level with ontological coaching, to the same level where I'm fluid between both businesses.
So
and getting clients to do both, because I really see the value for the physical training and the ontological to balance with both coaching aspects.
Okay. So I think I heard like one, where it comes to physical training, that's like you feel pretty this would be an example of a place where you're almost like used by the way that is. It's just, you don't have to think about it. You're not like, how do I like, would you like to hold a kettlebell? You just sort of can be in that conversation. You're not walking up to people in the center of the street and putting kettlebells in their hand or anything like that. So
Exactly.
it's like fairly natural expression of who you are. You don't have to work too hard or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like your work as coach is not experienced for you that way.
Yes.
Okay. And so where I'm not fully clear yet is like, is it, oh, I want to invite people into a deeper ontological conversation when they're in a training session with me? Or is it like, I'm not, there's a way I want to show up in my, like as coach in the world that I can't seem to get to, or somehow I want to ball them all together? Like, what is the real thing that you want to be creating outside of the concept of it? So I just want to offer you the reflection. Like, I noticed there's a lot of, for you, it's almost like in the stands for you, where you're talking about it like, oh, a greater, this is not a criticism, but like a greater sense of unities between the two. That makes sense conceptually. I just don't know what it looks like as lived in your life. So that's where I want you to bring yourself into.
Yeah. So I see it more as like one big bowl of spaghetti for me in the future, where everything is combined. I have people who are training physically as well as getting coached ontologically.
Okay.
I want to have that impact where people get what I feel for myself as a very well-rounded experience of training on both planes.
Okay.
And so that's the place I would like to get to, is creating that place where people are excited to be part of both experiences.
Got it. Okay. Let me just check in. It still feels a little like we're kind of talking about it conceptually. So
Sure.
I get the idea, right? Like together, but can you make that real for me? So like, almost like rather than think about it, you're a pretty thinky guy like me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can tell a little bit because you're really, you're quite great with metaphors. Like when you speak in metaphor, I'm like, oh, I get this metaphorically. I get it like a concept. But I think what might serve you, and definitely would serve me, so I have a selfish desire for you to do this, is for you to like, great. So imagine that you're now doing this and you've combined the bowl of spaghetti. How does that look as lived? So actually, I want you to kind of like see yourself in that, as opposed to getting it conceptually up here. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis, or when you're in a conversation with someone, or?
Yeah, I keep feeling myself drawn back to the same explanations. Very in my head about it. But yeah, just having the way I'm being and showing up as personal trainer be very reflective of who I show up as coach. And yeah, waking up, having personal training clients, having coaching clients, and having those people be experiencing as much as they can of physical and ontological coaching with me. Really creating more sustainable and effective lifestyles, like the well-rounded side of what I want to create.
So is there a place where you're like, oh, there's a real opportunity for this here, and I didn't step into it? Like, is there any place you can sort of, we can see this possibility getting stepped over, or like kind of, where, if I had this, if I had the whole spaghetti bowl, then in these situations, things would go a little different.
I don't know if it's that I've stepped over it. I think I'm just dipping my toes on the edge right now. So with the facility that I work at for personal training, I've also combined my service with their facility to offer ontological coaching in the same facility. And so I'm kind of getting into the spaghetti bowl, but I don't feel like my energy has dropped into the pool yet. Like I'm not there and committed to getting the coaching side running in the facility, and very easily drawn to just the personal training side.
Okay. And do you want it to be different, or I can't tell if you're like, oh, this is just how it is and this is great. In which case, sweet, we're there.
Right.
Very good coaching by me.
Yeah, and I think it is a little bit of the energy commitment is what I'm feeling. So very easy to keep going on the path that I'm on, where the fancy thing has already been said, where I'm offering coaching at the facility, but it's predominantly a gym. So physical training is what people come there for. So I think it's to go back to like kind of where I started with the coaching request, to have the identities combined, I think is committing the energy to having the identity of coaching at the gym.
Well, can I pause you, Nick?
Yeah.
So it sounds a little bit like right now you're trying to figure out, and check my feed, I'm not right about this, but it sounds a little bit like you're trying to figure out like, oh, here's what I need to do to get a thing. Is that track for you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You answered quick. Does it? I really want you to like,
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly how it feels over here. Like I spend a lot of time with the cogs turning, just like, how do I do it? What's the thing? How do I do it? What's the thing?
Yeah. So let me show you. Did I draw it here? I must have. Bear with me. I think I've got a diagram that'll help us. And it's going to help everyone watching us too. One more book for me to look through. This is the book of diagrams. All the secrets are in here, Nick. All the how-tos.
Ooh. Do you have any copies of that? Or?
And maybe it's not here. I burn it each time. I have to rewrite it every time, and then I burn it so I don't keep it for too long. Here we go. Okay, so we drew this up for the members of our Forge group. This is coaching for dummies and super smart forgers. And now that includes all of you watching. So again, we've got A, where is someone? So if someone came to me and said, Adam, I really want to get to Paris. And I was like, great. Where are you currently? And then what they would do, sometimes people are like, Paris, Eiffel Tower. I got to talk to you about Paris, 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 Paris. I don't want to look there. That's a waste of our time. We can't get them anywhere because we don't know where they are. If they're buried at the core of the earth, we're going to need to develop a drill with technology. And I'm going to bail out of this example really quickly now. Whereas if they were in Bordeaux, it would be a short trip. And so we need to know where someone is first. So I would say you and I are pretty clear on that. Like I get where you are. You've kind of got two businesses. You want to create more ontology. Second, we need to know where people want to get. So step one, where are you? Step two, where do you want to be? If we don't know where someone wants to go, there's not too much we can really do. It's just like looking at the map and talking about where they currently are, but it's not going to move them towards anything. Just so you know, Nick, this is not just for you, this is for everyone. So if you're like, wow, this guy's really belaboring the point. No, it's not for you. Step C, or 3, is what's the gap between where you are and where we want to get to? And only once we have these 3 things do we go to the next one, which is coaching to close the gap. So for everyone, we're not really coaching to close anything yet because we're not clear what Nick actually wants. It's more like what we've got is where Nick is and kind of the gap. Like that's what I'm hearing in your speaking, Nick, is like, oh, here's the problem. Here's the thing that's not there or that I need to address or fix or whatever. And then I hear you're sort of like thinking going to, okay, great. What do I need to do to close this gap? But what's still a little bit missing or feels kind of vague is what actually is it going to look like when we get there? Because maybe you need to better, whatever it was, but maybe you don't. Maybe none of that is necessary. Mm-hmm. So how does that land with you, first of all?
It does. It definitely feels like that's how I feel. very, I'm here and I know where the gap is, kind of.
Yeah.
And getting to the finish point is kind of like where I'm.
Yeah. Does that show up in BMX? Like, I'm pretty ignorant about this, but is that how it is, where you're like, okay, I'm here and I just need to navigate the obstacle in front of me? Or do you have to have like a sort of lot? Like I remember in mountain biking, which I sucked at, you needed to like create a line for yourself down the hill. And then that kind of guided how you dealt with the obstacles as they were showing up. What's BMX racing like?
Mostly anywhere between 3 and 8 people on the track at the same time. 25 to 40 seconds on the track. So like a short sprint over a lot of very difficult obstacles. And yeah, definitely. You have to pick your lines, and it's always dynamic, always changing. People are always cutting you off or trying to push you over.
Got it. And so but it sounds like there is like a line, like you have to actually be like, I'm trying to get there. This is the path. And then you adjust on the fly. You're not rigidly held to it, but you do have to kind of like choose that place. Okay. Got it. So what would there be to do from that kind of like context or metaphor or approach with what we're talking about right now?
I think it would go back to like the pre-race prep, visualizing the win, visualizing where I want to be at the finish line. It's kind of where I'm feeling lost. Like I know where the start gate is. I understand the track and what the obstacles kind of look like. Obviously, you're going to change on the fly, and it's going to be dynamic and fantastic and all that. But I don't know where I'm picturing the win, where that finish line is.
And it sounds like you mentioned you had a bit of resistance to that too. Like there was a part of you that kept wanting to go up into the concept or rather than really get into it. Like the concept of a BMX race, which I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, totally. You're on the right track. Yeah.
Thank you for the evaluation. So the concept of the BMX like destination you want to get to would be like, oh, I want to overcome the obstacles that are showing up in my way as they show up in my way so as to win the race. That would be like the conceptual description of what you're trying to do. But can you get that's kind of like up in this, like it's not really an as lived moment. If you're on that track and you're thinking, okay, I want to get to the blah, 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 so that I can you're going to fall off. Like those people are going to elbow you out of the way and you're going to be eating mud. Would that be fair?
Yeah. I'm going to be like trapped on the outside of what's going on.
Got it.
Yeah. There's no time to think on a track. It's all you practice, you pre-plan, it's all there. And then it changes when people get in your way.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that part?
Yeah. The competitiveness and the racing and the fact that what I was planning on changed immediately is like, it was great.
I like that too.
Forced me to not think. Just do.
Got it. Well, and to adapt on the fly is what I hear as well. That's part of it. Yeah. Okay. So clear on like the distinction of this concept of what you want to create kind of in the stands observing or thinking about versus like in the moment as lived in like on the court in your own life, so to speak. Okay. So if we were to come down from those stands and really get onto the court for you, like, and I get, there's like a part of you that's like, but I want to go up, like, I want to talk about the thing rather than be in it. But what can you tell me about, like, if you try to imagine like, okay, we've solved this, we've closed the gap. We don't know how, but you've created the bowl of spaghetti. Nick Benetti with his spaghetti. And very pleased with that, more so than you are. So having created that, tell me about it. Like, how does it look on a day-to-day basis? Come up with some scenario or something so that I can get that over here. Mm-hmm. And so that you can get it.
Yeah. So I think a wake up in the day of that life would be like 5 personal training clients on the docket is what I'd like to have every day.
Mm-hmm.
And probably 2 to 3 coaching clients.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, that's just how I feel. It's like that's all I see it with is just like the time that I'm putting in and where I'm committing to showing up for these people.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
That's how I see that day.
And you said you want it kind of to like blend in and all be like one. The way I heard that was kind of like you show up the same way regardless. It's not like over here is Nick Benetti, ontological coach, and over here is Nick Benetti, certified personal trainer. There's just like Nick Benetti in all of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So what would that look like? Like, can you think or can you imagine moments when you felt this pull, like, oh, I feel called to, there's something here I'm holding back. If only I could figure out the solution to this, then I wouldn't hold back in this moment. Have you ever had that experience?
Definitely. In training with someone, having moments where feeling that their energy is really drawn to a conversational aspect instead of a physical training aspect. And having the sense that there's a gap there, and not being in my right or wrong about it, but just feeling like and believing that if there was a way for the person to express that conversation, that the energy committed to personal training would be like amplified like crazy. Way more being to give up and be present with in training as well as coaching, because there's a gap when I was there with that person.
It sounds like you can see something available too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really feels like an energetic thing, that getting to that space with PT clients, there's energy drawn away from being in the moment with training. Mm-hmm. and having conversations with people who are being ontologically coached. It comes up for me every once in a while, being, I guess, who I am when I hold that space, is that a lot of the like physical denominations of who we believe we are show up in conversation. And instead of just trying to diffuse it and not give credence to that, really draws energy away from the conversation as well. So being able to be just who I be for people, and hold both spaces equally as regal.
Yeah, well, so that's interesting, because you talk about like both spaces, kind of like even in no make wrong here, but I just noticed even in that there's like a separation. There's this space and there's this space, as opposed to them all being the space, which is the clearing that Nick is everywhere in the world, always. So tell me, from these two, like I hear right now, the context you operate in is like, there's this and there's this. There's physical training and there's this. So in those moments, when you can see possibility, you're like, ooh, I feel this person, like there's a space here for a conversation or something, but we're over here in physical training land. From that context, what happens for you? How do you show up from that? Like they're separate, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. When that happens, I definitely, it almost triggers me. I get into a place where my energy goes to, oh, like I really want to commit to inviting this person to a conversation.
Yeah.
Or I really want to invite this person to train.
That would be the other side. Is that right?
Yeah.
Got it.
And I get really stuck with it. Just like, well, this person's paid me for being over here. Is it really becoming for me to be like, but what about this? But wait, there's more.
Got it.
And so I get stuck, and then I don't have the conversation, and then I feel like my energy dissipates as I stew about what's not becoming.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. It sounds like you get kind of up in here as opposed to out here with someone. Like one of the things we really took away from Cancun this past 8 days or so is like most of us spend our time, there's like in here and then there's out there. But there's this like entirely different dimension that we can operate from, which is out here. It's like, oh, this is all of it. So okay, so it sounds like there's like this thing where you're like, oh, I there's a space here. Like I could invite them into something. There's a real possibility. And then what happens is you get into like, I shouldn't do that. You get kind of triggered, like they've paid me for this. So what is that story that's at play there? If you can get it succinct.
Not really sure. Just feels like ethically out of context in the moment.
Okay, well, we can work starting there. Ethically out of context. So what we want to get to is like kind of there's almost like, it sounds like a voice or a script that runs. It's like, you can't do this, even though this is what's there in the moment. You can't do this because blah, 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 blah. And that's the story that's running. And it sounds kind of like it's ethically out of context. Can you get that any more like just in real, normal people words?
Yeah. So being in the personal trainer side of it, when that space shows up to have in the invitation for a conversation, for me, it feels almost dirty to be selling another service at the time that somebody's already like committed to being a PT client.
Got it. So it's like wrong for me to offer anything other than PT.
Yeah. And I get okay with having the conversation and providing the invitation after we're done with the hour and 15 minutes of PT work.
Yeah.
But then the energy is not in the same space.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's in the moment. It's showing up in the moment. That space is being created in the moment with you. You still there? Did you freeze? Can you hear me, Nick? Oh, there you go. You're back. Okay, great.
I can hear you. Yeah.
So the first thing I want to do, Nick, is really acknowledge you for creating a space where your client like this can actually show up. Now, I get it. You're getting in your head about it because it's like what I'm hearing is happening is there's kind of the doing conversation, which is often where we enter physical training, right? We're like, I need to fix my body is often where a lot of us start. And then sometimes we approach it more empowered, and that's great too. But it's like a conversation about what I need to do and being supported to do that. And what I want to acknowledge you for is that you're creating a clearing where people are actually experiencing the opportunity for something deeper. And even if it's not yet being talked about, it's felt. Like you feel that, they feel that. So I really want to acknowledge you before we go any further. You're actually already being like what you want is already there to an extent. Do you get that?
I do. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you get that like here, or do you get it intellectually?
Oh, I get it like right here.
Okay, great.
That's definitely where I feel it.
Awesome. So we don't want to stop. Like that's not where we end. I get you want to like develop your art in this so you can go deeper with it, but I just want you to get like it's already there. That's the cool thing. So it's not like, how do I bolt this thing onto the side of what I'm already doing so that I can then blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, it's already there. And then what's happening, it sounds like, is you get up here and you're like, how do I do it right? Oh my God, there's rules that I have to follow and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk to everyone else for just a sec, which is what we've been doing this whole time. For everyone that's watching this, like, oh, he forgot coaching for dummies. He stopped doing this. No, we're still trying to figure this out. We're just working with what Nick's got and what Nick is bringing, which is all fantastic, to find our way to what he really wants. So the next question is like the next foray towards that. So notice there's always an opportunity to support someone, to coach them, so to speak, even if all you're doing is helping them figure out what they want. We don't have to jump to closing the gap. So my question for you, Nick, is let's imagine that it was all okay. There was no rule. There was no like ethical guidelines it's like, I imagine this big, thick tome that's like ethical guidelines for certified physical trainers and ontologically trained coaches living in, like, it's very specific, but big. It's like your book only, but huge, flip through it. So let's imagine that wasn't there, that we just removed that entirely. And I'm not saying we'll stop there, but like, what would you want to do in that moment when this shows up, if it was all on the table?
Pause, hold the space, just like invite the person to experience what's going on in that moment. And it almost feels like a reflection of this moment for me, actually, to just be with it. Like, what's really there? What created that? What was the trigger point for this to show up with either the personal training session or with the ontological coaching side? Just be with it.
What's there for you in this moment?
An invitation, a pull forward, an opening. Like, it's what it feels like. And I have take the opportunity just to invite them to have a conversation. No strings, there's no games, there's no, like, I'm not screwing with you. If there's something here, let's talk about it.
So what I got from that was really, one, like, there's an opportunity for you to pause. And I think I kind of heard you saying, like, be with it rather than get up here, where it sounds like you don't get much of an opportunity to be with what's going on. You're like, oh God, I got to like arrange the gears and do all that stuff. Yeah. Look through this tome
of ethics.
Yeah, that's right. It's so fucking heavy. Oh my God. And instead, the opportunity, it sounds like you're saying, is to really, one, slow down and be with what's showing up in the moment. Okay. And then the second part was to make an invitation. Is that right?
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Like, hey, I noticed that the energy isn't in the session right now. The thing that you're talking about, maybe where you're committing a lot of energy to, if you're interested, do you want to have a conversation about it so we can commit powerfully to who you're being right now? Training or coaching or both? Do we need to have the conversation while we're training? And my coaching ethics go like, okay, well, that's not a private conversation. How does this work? Like,
kind of like this one.
Can't coach somebody while they're in the gym, but I'm being coached live on Facebook. It's like, well, my tome of ethics needs to be lit on fire.
So it sounded, I really honor you for practicing in this moment. Like, I want you to get where we started was like way up in the bleachers, sort of watching the game being played in your life down there. And like, we've come way down. You feel much more in your life. And it still feels a little bit like you're trying to figure out, like, what's the right way to invite them? What's the opportunity here? How is it okay to do this? What? So set aside all of how it should go, the right way to invite them, all of that stuff. Like, what do you want it to look like?
I want it to be opportunity for vulnerability in that moment, just to show up.
Do you have a person where you remember this sort of happening where you were like working with them or training, or you guys met up or something, and you were like, oh, there's like something there.
Actually, I think where this experience comes from is actually like more from me. So when I was training, when I was racing,
Mm-hmm.
I had a personal trainer who I worked with 4 days a week, and it would show up, and the space was kind of washed over.
Mm-hmm.
I would, 15, 16 years old, and showing up and having all of this like, oh my God, you're on the provincial team. Oh my God, you're on the national team. Oh my God, there's all these things that you need to do to be this person. And I would show up to train, and I could still train powerfully and be in that space, but I was never 100% committed to like what was going on in the moment because I was so pulled this way.
Mm-hmm. So is that an example where you were on? I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. That's like where I was on the other side of it, and the space for vulnerability and conversation was never there.
What was the impact on you? What were you left in?
It was heavy. Like I had to just like, you know what? Fuck it, manage it yourself.
Got it. On your own.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
I'd say there was a lot of that just piled up in my BMX career. And then when I had an opportunity to play into my survival mechanism at 18 years old, I was like, nah, fuck it. I'm retiring. Like I'm injured badly. Like this is cool. I'm done.
Mm.
And I think lacking that space for vulnerability and support structure just created a growing tumor of this fucking blows.
Mm. Yeah. And what was it like in the moment? So it sounds like you had these experiences like you're describing with your clients now, back then where you're like, oh, there's something like you felt or were present to an opportunity for a conversation deeper or different than the one you were, in. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so if you can put yourself into that, like be out here in that experience, what was that like when it was being stepped over? How did that occur to you? How did that feel?
A little bit abandoned.
Little abandoned?
Yeah. That's like the most predominant sensation with that moment for me.
Got it. So what would you have liked in those moments?
I think just the space to get it out
Mm.
and see where I could have taken it. The reflection back now, when I look at how that could have gone, might have provided me the opportunity to know how to have a conversation with like can sport, how to ask for more of what I wanted, rather than like, because I would get stuck in doing the grind the gears, live in my ethics bubble. It's okay. I won't ask for what I want from the moment in life because I'm doing the thing that's okay right now.
Huh. Yeah. So it's like you're doing you and your client, it sound like, are doing the things that are okay.
Mm.
What are you taking from this conversation so far?
I've given myself a really great opportunity to create what I had desired as a powerful experience, and give that to people so that they can ask for way more out of the experience, or can ask for the thing that they're after in the experience, rather than just like, I'm okay. It's okay. It's okay. Like I don't want the personal training or the coaching to just be okay. Like I want it to be like, euphoric, like that experience.
Yeah. What about when it's not euphoric?
Still okay. Not like I'm being cheated out of an experience or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. There's a whole range, right? It'll be euphoric when it's euphoric. And it'll be challenging when it's challenging. It'll be fun when it's fun. Okay. So where do you see there is to go from here, Nick?
Really feels just practice. Finding that access point for myself. Permission to practice that way.
Tell me, yeah, permission's an interesting word there. Tell me about that.
It goes back to that the sensation of that ethics tone.
Yeah, it felt kind of that way to me too.
Yeah, not giving because right now, probably the last 5-10 minutes of conversation, I've noticed I feel lightheaded but very open-hearted to the conversation.
Yeah.
Like that heavy ethics tone is kind of like over here, not sitting on top of my skull.
Yeah.
But yeah, permission feels that way. Like going back into the moment with a client, it's going to be like, am I okay to do this?
What's a more powerful context you could bring to this? So I really get, right, there's like right, wrong, okay, not okay, ethically sound, whatever. Like all of it is kind of, there is a correct way to be in the moment, which sounds like it leaves you with a pile of bricks weighing down on the top of your head.
Yeah.
Do you get the question? Do you remember the question I asked?
No, I was just very feeling the moment. I was basking in it, really.
Cool. What showed up for you as you were feeling it in a moment?
I was kind of envisioning that moment with where it shows up, like without playing into that. There's a rule for me to be able to ask the question. I just have the opportunity and be out here rather than up here.
What do you think might come possible for your clients if you were out here with them in those moments?
The word that's showing up for me is like freedom.
Tell me more about that.
Feels like freedom shows up for me as kind of like a energy clearing space, where it's just not being siphoned one direction or the other. It's like dropping the borders, dropping the walls, and just being like, okay, let's experience it.
And what would that make available for your clients if like the person they were with was just out here with them, able to be with whatever is showing up in the moment?
Trust, for sure. Something I find showing up there.
Are you trying to think about the answer, or are you getting yourself present to them in the moment and looking for yourself?
Getting present to that moment and being there in that moment.
Okay.
Yeah, trust for sure. I want to say safety, but maybe vulnerability is a better way to look at that, or a different way to look at that.
Keep going. You're doing great.
Right. like love in that moment.
Mm. Hmm. Did you get much of that? Like, was that your experience when you were training?
I when I was training, like I would get the trust thing, knowing that my PT is certified, knows what he's talking about, trust in the moment for sure.
Yeah.
Didn't feel a lot of that like freedom or vulnerability. It was directed movements, correction, and like this is the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think the flip side of how it feels in that moment when I'm imagining it, how like love shows up, putting myself back to where I was when I was training with a PT, it feels more as if you could describe it as like instead of love. It was like, yeah, this is great. We're friends. Cool. Shake hands. Awesome.
Yeah. Provided we don't have to talk about anything that showed up there.
Exactly.
We'll fist bump instead.
Yeah. Yeah. No germs.
Or whatever cool BMX handshake you guys have. Yeah. And like, I really, as you were sharing about your experience growing up in those moments, it's like really managing yourself and kind of abandoned. Like, doesn't sound like there's a lot of opportunity for love in there. And I'm with you as I heard you started like, oh, freedom, which sounded a little bit like, oh, I wouldn't, I didn't have to do right or wrong. I fixed that because now I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
It's often freedom for us, right? Is like really the answer to what ails us instead of the real thing.
Yeah.
And then trust felt a little bit further out, from fixing right or wrong, but still like, as you described it with your previous trainers, like, oh, I can trust them because X, Y, Z, they've got this, blah, 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 blah. But then as you dropped into love, I really felt you in that. Like that really felt like an opportunity that might cause a lot to blossom for you and your clients. And that sounds entirely outside of a conversation about, is this right? Is this wrong?
Yeah.
And certainly not possible inside that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think would become possible for your clients if they had the experience of love when they were training, working on themselves?
It feels like the reflection would be there for them too, to drop the barriers of what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like how they show up for physical training is like fat, skinny, tall, short, like you're you, love it. And it feels like picking a goal moving forward rather than picking a goal to bash who I am today.
Right.
Yeah.
And what would the impact of that be?
A way more fruitful experience, like loving showing up and working on themselves. Just loving showing up to be in the space. I think it would also provide a really good opportunity to like for the facility itself to grow into an experience like that. So it's not just the one-on-one clients that feel that, it's also like the members in general.
Mm. Mm. And what about you, Nick? Like, what would the impact be of having that experience as you go through the world, as you take on like physical training or whatever?
It's intriguing. It feels like mysterious, almost like I want to just like open the book and just keep reading. Feels a lot more inviting for me. Like I've been invited to the conversation.
How would work be different for you if that was what you were creating with the people you were training?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, going back to what I just said about the like me being invited to the conversation, it feels like then I get to be present to how cool that invitation is to the conversation, or being present to that moment. coming from that place, I get to be the invitation rather than request the invitation.
I love that. Sounds simpler over here. Like your life's just, when I'm getting in there, like it just feels a lot, just less you have to do, less to figure out. Just feels much simpler.
Yeah, it's definitely how it feels over here too.
Got it. So what do you see to practice? Are you clear on what's possible?
Yes.
So how might you practice this?
I think just holding that space with love, being present with that as who I be, who I show up as.
What would that look like as lived?
As lived.
Mm-hmm. Like I get the concept, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
I noticed myself go straight up to the top. I was like, ooh, up here.
Yeah, come out here.
Mm-hmm. Being in the gym, being super open with who shows up and talking to everybody, being just being in a space where it's all present. Just not showing up with distinguishments or judgments of what's going on in a conversation. Yeah, it feels spacey. Right? Not Kevin Spacey, but like space.
Uh-huh. So what is the thing that you've distinguished as stopping this from happening?
I live by rules.
Right, like you get into your head and start like, oh my God, what's the right thing to do here? What's ethically sound, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So do you see anything to practice around that?
Yeah, just having the conversation. Committed to being in that moment, not filtering whether I'm going to ask a question or not.
Got it.
Provide the space, be open to being wrong or have no as an option.
Well, let me offer you a simpler practice. Like I like where you're looking, and it's like you're sort of like a few steps out into the future, which is great. So what I'm hearing you say is, well, when I notice I'm up here, like just speak to the thing. Hey, it feels like there's like a deeper conversation in this moment. Like, would you like to have that? We can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever. We can even have it while you're training. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I notice that. So the possibility is love, right? Is that what we're kind of playing for?
Yeah.
An experience of love through personal training. I can tell you, I know millions of people that would have a transformational impact in their lives if that was the experience they got from working on themselves physically. Not really how most of us relate to our physical work, right? It's like mostly hate. I suck, I'm fat, I'm shitty, I'm lazy, whatever. Here's what I need to do to fix that. Maybe one day I'll get there and then I'll feel like it doesn't work. Or at least it works the way it works. It doesn't give people the experience that they're really trying to create for themselves, does it?
No.
So love is the opportunity. I hear that's the possibility you're playing for. That's what we're really going for here. And it sounds like what's getting in the way is there's something in the moment and you go up here trying to figure it out. So perhaps all that you might practice, or perhaps something to practice in addition to the stuff you've already said, is when you notice that happening, well, just notice that happening. You reaching for notes or are you petting a
Yeah,
cat?
I'm reaching for notes.
Okay, great. Do you want to write that down? Just noticing this part?
Mm-hmm.
I have two more things for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you may just operate like hold in your sort of have like the context maybe is when you are in the ethical right, wrong, what's the right way to be, that's you resisting love. You may just hold it that way. So when you notice it, oh, what am I resisting in this moment? Okay, final thing. Let me just walk myself back there. Notice the impact that it has when you get up into this conversation. So you're going to practice noticing that, like, oh, I'm up here. I'm going to practice getting back here. I'm going to like walk, you're going to walk your way out here. But sometimes that's going to be scary or you can't, or you're just like, it's too well worn a pattern. So in those situations, just notice what's the impact of me being up here? What is that creating? What's that putting into the space? Anything else you see, Nick, that you think would really benefit you to put into action or to practice from what we've talked about today?
It really draws me up to like trying to find the solution.
Yeah.
So I think practicing the what's here now is going to be a really great opportunity for me.
Yeah. Beautiful. Nice. So where we started was you said like, oh, I want to a greater sense of unity between the identities is kind of where we started. How did we do with that? Like, are we moving you in that direction? Did we completely miss the mark? Where are you left at the end of this conversation?
Feeling that how I think like practicing this and noticing where I get into the right, wrong, and in my ethics thing, and getting back out to being love and that space for people. Yeah, it really goes back to where we started for me. Kind of like dropping the barrier, the ethics barrier between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, wrong gets in the way of my love a lot too. It's appropriate. I'll just share my intentions to connect with you and normalize your experience or just to be in your experience with you. For the longest time, I would not smile at anyone because I was worried they would think I was coming on to them, trying to pick them up. And so instead I was comfortable frowning at people. That felt okay to me. I could like have disdain towards someone, but not smile, which is just interesting. Like, oh, wow, it's not okay to smile at someone because of what they'll make it mean. And like, you can tell that's just like, if the smile's there, the smile's there. I don't have to force it, but there's moments when it's just like a smile is the thing that's here in this moment. So I really get it. And I want to honor you for practicing to create a different experience for you and for them. I want to acknowledge you by way of finishing up before we do anything to have this conversation be complete.
Sorry, I missed that. I think I cut out a little bit.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge you to finish up, and then we'll go to like debriefing. But before we do, anything for you to have this conversation be complete, this part of the conversation.
I feel complete.
Cool, man. Well, Nick, I really acknowledge you for your heart. It's clear to me you're very brilliant too. And what a great tool to protect yourself from, the vast vulnerability that a heart the size of yours represents. It's just like, wow, I can feel so much. It's overwhelming. Got to create some kind of filter rather than just be like blown apart, or do it even worse, like do it wrong and then cause some harm that's irreparable, or whatever the story might be. And I really honor you for being willing to practice bringing the gift of your love to whatever space you're in, whether it's an ontological one, whether it's a physical training one. And to me, that is such a beautiful model of all there is you in whatever you're showing up in. And man, I can just see how much that could shift in the world, especially at the gyms. Heather shared like love as opposed to bashing who you are today. She really liked that wording that you had. Said that's the trainer I would want. She said, as a former national level competitor, I would have benefited from that. And I think a lot of us would. There's a way that we are about our physicality that is not that. It is something else, and it keeps us really stuck. And so I really honor you, Nick, for being willing to like get out of the concepts and stuff like that and come down here into the world, and then to practice that out there in the world, to practice being with people. Thanks for that. Yeah. Okay. Well, so now I'm going to sort of shift. We'll do a bit of debriefing. I've got a few things to share, but anything that was present for you, Nick, anything you noticed in that conversation, anything where you were like, I didn't like this, or like anything at all that's there that you'd care to share?
No, something I did notice in the conversation was like, really felt like a lead by example sort of thing. Like the way that you held me in the moment was very similar to the place where I'm working to create that. Like it's the love and the vulnerability. It's in the space, and it created that opportunity for me to go like, okay, now I'm off the bleachers and I'm in the field, so I get to experience it. So yeah, I really wanted to thank you for that, because it was really awesome.
You're welcome. That's cool. That's cool to hear. One of the things I was really present to was my desire to coach you on your gap, and how below that I was like, that's not the place. Like part of what was there for me was like, oh, there's people watching, there's a coaching conversation, and oh my God, like all of that was there for me. I was really present to it, and was really in the practice of, no, I'm going to actively set that aside, because that's not, we don't know what Nick knows the gap, but we don't know where he wants to really get to yet. There's just not that experience that he can speak to. That's very edgy. I can feel that for me. And I imagine that that's part of how you may experience it. If you're talking about like this mirroring your experience, there's probably that moment. It's like, ooh, what's edgy in this moment is to be with what's here rather than to do the right thing. And that's like the right thing for me is like coach his balls off, or whatever, right? Like just coach anything, fuck, doesn't matter. And so I really honor you. It demands something of us. It's not free to just be with someone. Actually calls us forth. So thank you for that. Heather said, Adam, I see how much time you're spending helping Nick get clear on what he really wants. This is valuable to see, as I would be concerned as the coach that I might be frustrating Nick by holding him here, so to speak. I'm curious, was that your experience? Like, did you have like a sense of frustration? Like, come on, coach my balls off, or something like that?
No, and I know that that's how I tend to show up in a coaching conversation. Probably with my experience going through the program and having coaches and being coached previously, I know that that's how my survival mechanism shows up.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to let it play. So like getting into a conversation, I might spend 15 or 20 minutes of my hour conversation with a coach doing this like merry-go-round bullshit fest where it's like, oh, you're in the stands, you're in the stands, you're in the stands. And then finally it's like, okay, my legs are tired. We'll go actually into what's happening. So like, no, I know that it happens for me, and it sometimes it works for me to call it out. Sometimes it works for me to just play with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally appreciate that you just kept going. Like it does not get tedious. It doesn't get boring. Like it's, for me, I turn it into more of like, okay, this is fun. Like we're playing instead of like bashing what's going on. So just be with it, right?
That's cool. I would have it like, I'm with Heather. I would have, well, I'm with all of us in this conversation. Like it wouldn't have surprised me if you had felt frustrated, and that would have been fine too. Like that's a relatable experience for me where I'm like, no, but I know the thing I need to fix. Like, yeah. Now set that aside. I'm like, no, but I'm so right. And so that's cool that that wasn't what you were experiencing in that moment. And Heather, for both you and I, that's good feedback, right? Like notice that wasn't what the client was experiencing. And in fairness, that I wasn't experiencing frustration from you either, Nick. And if that did start to show up, that probably would have been the conversation to have. Like, hey, seems like you're getting a little frustrated. What's going on for you? So for you, Heather, you can always do that. That's the beautiful thing about a conversation like this one, is that we empower the relationship such that everything is on the table to speak about. And then if it starts to show up like, oh, am I frustrating you? Is this an annoying conversation? We can start to look into that. Heather really loved how you were starting to create a space and opportunity by how you're being with your clients. And looks like that's all we've got there. Let me just check and see if there's anything else I was present to that I want to speak to. Oh, I think there was. One sec. In coaching, we're always working with wherever someone is stuck. So whatever the gap is from them getting where they are currently to where they want to be, we're working to close that gap. And sometimes at the very like early on, or just whenever someone starts working with a coach, the gap is we can't identify what we want. We can talk about it conceptually, but we can't actually speak it into the world in a way that is on the court in our lives. And as lived, spoken experience, this is what I'm trying to create. And so that's the gap that we start to close. And I often find early on in coaching relationships with people, we're spending a lot of time working on that. And I would imagine as time went on, if Nick and I were continuing to be in a conversation like that, he would create some kind of breakthrough around this where he could get really clear, like, here's what I want, rather than, is it right for me to want this? Do I have to blah, 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 like all of that stuff? Instead, just be like, all right, I got the thing I want. Great. Then that gap's closed. And now what's the next thing to move into? So we're always closing some kind of gap, even if it's not being able to identify what it is we want. Okay. Let me check and see if there's anything I want to plug at people. Nick, is there anywhere, if people want to learn more about you, that they can go and learn more about you?
Yeah. So my website is drivenbeyond.com.
Drivenbeyond.com?
Yes.
Cool.
And actually, I think it's a .ca. Yeah, it's drivenbeyond.ca.
.ca. Right. Got it. Yeah, it's shorter. That's much more efficient.
Right.
I don't know about you. I usually get halfway through to the last couple of letters of the URL. I'm like, fuck it. And just close my browser.
After that last dot, I'm kind of done. I'm also featured on Sandcastle Fitness website as well.
Cool. Is there anywhere people can go and see you shredding dirt, as you guys say?
I believe there's a couple of really brilliant crash videos of me on YouTube.
Cool.
Those always seem to be the ones that get the most attention.
That is true.
My Facebook profile is fairly open, and if there's racing on there, there's racing on there. So
cool. I'll say by way of closing down, For anyone that's curious about the work I was doing in Cancun or leadership in general, check out my podcast, which is Get Lit by Adam Quiney. There's some other losers doing Get Lit podcasts. Don't listen to those ones. Only go to the one I'm doing. I'll be talking a lot over the next probably couple of weeks, bringing in some of the distinctions and the way they really were so rigorous with their language around leadership. That was one of the things I really learned, was the power of language when we really lay it out. And at times I can feel a little bit tedious, but man, on the other side of it, it really opens some stuff up. So tune in if you're curious about that. And the doors are open for the intensive. It's not until May 14th to May 17th here in beautiful Victoria. Nick, you're in Victoria too, right?
I'm in South Surrey. Across the water from you.
So sorry. You don't get to live in the best place on earth. But
sorry.
But yeah, it's in beautiful Victoria. Gorgeous around that time of year. So super charming. And a lot of people in the past said, oh, if only I knew sooner. Guess what? Now you do. So if that is something you're interested in, you can go to evergrowthcoaching.com/the-intensive, or you can probably just search Evergrowth Coaching the Intensive, and you'll see all the details that you could want. It is an event not to be missed. It's going to be amazing and transformational. And Heather, you can sign up to get the podcast, but you have to go through like your podcast app or whatever there is. It's not like an email list or something like that. Okay, that's all we've got for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next Friday. Nick, hang on. I'm going to end this live. I'm letting them in on the scenes. Guys, we're doing stuff behind the scenes now. We're going to end the live. You're going to go away, but Nick and I will keep talking. All right, bye everyone.